on? Yeah, very good morning to all of you. First of all, on behalf of Center for Digital Economy Policy Research, I extend a warm welcome to today's roundtable. This roundtable will deal with the subjects of a great topical relevance, captioned, it is over here, enhancing the income potential of three-wheelers auto rickshaw drivers, a case for dual licensing policy. As the name suggests, you can see that there is an intersection between the welfare, particularly of a vulnerable section called auto drivers, and the regulations. The event is being organized and being brought to you by Digital Economy Thought Leaders Forum, which is an integral platform of the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. C-DEP, in short, was conceived and founded a decade back by none other than Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, who is with us today. And since then, C-DEP has traversed a long journey in its relentless campaign for promoting digital economy with a penultimate vision, the vision of contributing to the grand vision of making India a digitally empowered country. To name a few achievements of C-DEP, let me tell you a few. C-DEP contributed greatly to the formulation of the IT Act at the initial stage, simplification of a whole lot of taxation laws and statutes in the country, right? And C-DEP had recently brought out a research paper suggesting a very, very robust methodology for calculating the contribution of digitalization to the gross domestic products. It is the first of its kind. And C-DEP is also embarked upon and continuing with its campaign for open data. This is all about the C-DEP in brief. I thought I will bring to your notice. In today's roundtable, we have distinguished panelists. First and foremost, Professor Anup Chawla. Professor Chawla is the Volvo Chair Professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering. He is an acclaimed specialist in the area of biomechanics, dynamics, and CAD. Professor Chawla, who has authored this report, which is the center of discussion of today. I welcome you, sir. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, an IIT Kanpur, IMM Calcutta, and PhD from IIT Delhi. I call him a crusader of digitalization. The time when nobody understood what digital is all about, here is a man who envisioned the rise of a new phenomenon called digital economy. And that is true. He has advised many foreign governments on digitalization and e-governance. And currently, he is advising METI as well. He has been the knowledge partner of many, many IT initiatives of the government of India, the list of which is so large that I don't have time to tell all about it. And obviously, he is the founder of C-DEP. I welcome you, Dr. Jayajit. Now I have with you, all of us, Ashish Rawat, a very young, energetic engineering service officer serving in MOD, that is the Minister of Road Transport. And I, as I understand, and I've been told, has a great accomplishment in the road transport projects under his belt. Welcome, Ashish. We have also with us Professor Vignesh, a professor of information system at IIT, the Department of Management Studies, IIT Delhi. Professor Vignesh has a very salutary contributions in the area of ICT application, particularly those which have a close intersection with the social welfare. Welcome, Professor Vignesh. Now, with this spectacular array of distinguished panelists, we'll be beginning our roundtable. May I now request all the panelists to please come to the dais. Here it is. Sharad, copies. Give the mic. Give the mic to them. Thank you very much for this. Before we go for initiating the discussion on the roundtable, we'll have a few moments to release the report authored by Professor Chawla in association with Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. I will request Ashish to do us the honor of releasing the report. Dr. Jajit Bhattacharya, would you like to assist Ashish in releasing the report? And the other panelists may also please join in saying this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashish, for spelling. Now with the hold it. Take one photo. Thank you. Now, with your permission, we'd like to start this roundtable discussion. I presume I have the permission of the panelists. Thank you. Well, I would like to begin with Dr. Jajit to begin with. Well, Dr. Jajit, before you go to the substantive discussion, our audience will be very interested to know that what were the initial thoughts that led you to believe this is an apt area for exploration, further research? What are those considerations? Particularly so because you are fully aware of the existing regulatory regime where the dual usage was not permissible. But still, you thought it had fit to explore this by way of a further research and probing. What are those considerations?
Thank you, Dr. Mitra and fellow panelists, and thank you for having me here. The process started from the fact, Dr. Mitra, if you recollect, I've always been saying that while being in India, we still don't think like Indians. And what I mean by that is we design a metro station, but we forget to have parking for three-wheeler in the metro station, around the metro station. We design an Indian city and we don't plan to have festival infrastructure within the city. And then we say we are messy, we break down cities. The cities have been planned based on what the Western requirements have been, not the Indian requirements. We have autorickshaws, we have cycles, we have old people, we have got temples, mosques, churches. So all of that needs to be factored in. Now, why am I talking about it? Is because India has one of the largest three-wheeler vehicle population in the world. In fact, we are the largest manufacturer, largest population. And when e-commerce descended on India, we did not look at three-wheeler as a specific mode of transportation we can add on to the current requirement of supply chain and logistics in the e-commerce area. When we looked at that situation, what we realized is that because the Western world does not use three-wheelers for supply, so we are not using three-wheelers for supply. We simply seem to be inspired, copy-pasted from what's happening in the West. Added to the issue is that three-wheelers are actually a national asset. Any asset is a national asset for that matter, it's within the economy. If you're not using it to its fullest extent, it's a national loss. So after 3 years, 4 years, an auto rickshaw is thrown away without it being used to its optimal level, it's a loss in terms of a national economic loss. What that also implies is that drivers are losing out on income because the national income happens through the drivers really earning. So can we therefore combine all these dynamics, which is e-commerce happening, requirement for last mile, the driver's income getting enhanced, and having the ability to embed three-wheelers into the existing supply chain and ecosystem. And that's where we started thinking of how we can work towards enhancing the income levels of the auto rickshaw drivers, what's stopping them from getting embedded into the supply chain, what are the safety issues, what are the other regulatory issues, and therefore can we help in increasing the the income levels of the auto rickshaw drivers, thereby also increasing the taxes collected by the government, and also reducing the cost of supply chain and increasing the national economic wealth. That was basically the background to why we started off on this research.
Yeah, what Dr. Bhattacharya in effect wanted to say is, using an economic parlance, he was concerned with the lost opportunity cost of an asset. So what he tried to say that why we should lose the opportunity cost of an asset, why not put into the other use? That's a very, very thoughtful insight on your part. But Dr. Bhattacharya, at the same time, I would like to draw your attention that in a country like ours, when you try to surpass a particular regulation which is in existence for a long time, particularly the legacy rules, don't you think that it may have certain opposition from certain other stakeholders? Do you
I
think
mean,
so?
not really. Why would there be an opposition?
Right.
Who are the stakeholders? The auto rickshaw driver is a stakeholder. They stand to gain. The households are a stakeholder because they will get their goods at a cheaper cost. They stand to gain. Even if you look at the startups, the e-commerce companies in this country, they stand to gain. If you look at the government, they get more income. More importantly, they are helping the citizens gain more income. So they get more taxes, the government gets more taxes, the citizens gets more income. It's a win-win for all stakeholders. So there isn't we don't foresee any pushback from any stakeholder because it's really helping all the stakeholders. I think the only concern is to do it the right way, right? And wherein we reached out to Professor Chawla, being the noted expert in this area, to figure out what is the right way of enabling this kind of a transformation where we enable the auto rickshaw drivers to carry both passengers and cargo and therefore increase their livelihood.
Okay, thank you. We'll come down to Professor Chawla to understand what is the right way of doing it. But before that, you, sir, I want to know, you have been advising Government of India, that I know from my personal knowledge, for a long time on a complex transportation issues. Has ever any such thinking struck to the government in the past?
So there have been discussions earlier. For example, the multimodal logistics park, which was initiated with help of ADB. In fact, we had a fantastic multimodal logistics park in Assam near the Pandu port, which had all the modes of transportation. Be it river, be it train, be it truck, be it airplane. The issue was always that how do we do the last mile? How do we break down the big trucks into smaller trucks, leave the least amount of carbon footprint? Because if you take a big truck in with a small package, you are releasing that much of carbon footprint into the atmosphere. So how do we do it in the most optimal way? And therefore, the requirement and the demand was always there to have smaller units of transportation and smaller vehicles. But somehow the steps were not taken. I think this is perhaps the right time when these steps are taken to ensure that from a bigger unit we take a smaller unit for delivery and therefore reduce the carbon footprint in the process.
Thank you. We'll take the lead from your last statement from Ashish and later on. Now coming to Professor Chawla. Sir, you authored this particular report. So when C-DEP approached you with the report and you agreed to look into this matter, sir, would you be very grateful if you share your insight and the findings of your research report?
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. Yeah. So when I was approached for giving my opinion on this subject, I must say that I was quite happy to an extent that we have been looking at three-wheelers for a long time. I mean, we've been looking at safety aspects. We've been looking at how they contribute to the Indian, I won't say the economy, we are not experts on economy, but the Indian transportation sector. It is quite unfortunate that the general impression that the public has is that three-wheelers are a very unsafe mode of transport. Okay, three-wheelers, we're talking of the auto rickshaws or the three-wheeled scooter taxis, whatever we call them. Okay, people do think that they are very unsafe and they can topple over, and just because they are on three wheels, they are not as safe as, let's say, the car or other modes of transport. Okay. However, all studies in the past have indicated that that is not really the case. I mean, that's a misconception. Okay. And even in the general public, the three-wheelers I would say the three-wheeler drivers, they also have earned a bad reputation because people say that they don't treat the public properly, they cheat on them, and all kinds of things are there. But what they forget in that process is that why are they forced to do that? They're forced to do that, if at all they're doing it, is because of the economics of the thing. By itself, the way the auto rickshaw runs and the number of kilometers the driver can actually run it during the day, the amount of money that he hopes to earn, is that enough for him? That is the crux of the thing, and that is what this report also touches upon. That income that really needs to be supplemented in order to utilize it fully. Okay, when I say utilize it fully, there is a certain cost of the auto rickshaw. There is a certain infrastructure that is being used. His time is being put to use, and so on. And the returns have to be there for him and for the country as such. For the returns have to be viable. Okay, and that is what we are touching upon. And obviously, if we want to open up the vehicle, open up the auto rickshaw for a dual mode of transport, meaning we allow it to be used for commercial activities also, we have to ensure that the safety of the vehicle is not the safety of the vehicle, safety of the occupant, and the safety of the people on the road is not compromised. Okay. Having said that, it is important to mention that when it comes to safety, we don't have standards for a three-wheeler the way they have for, let's say, the car. And that's again basically because of the fact that when we are talking of the car, you have American standards, you have European standards, you have standards everywhere else in the world, so we are in a position to adapt them very easily. Okay, but for three-wheelers, we don't really have a safety standard. Okay, we don't have let's say conditions are put down that there should be a seat belt, or it should be safe under maybe frontal impact condition or a rollover condition, and so on and so forth. All those criteria are meant only for the car. Okay, so within the realm of whatever safety concerns we have, we wanted to ensure that if it is used for commercial applications also, if it is used as a pickup vehicle, if people are carrying goods in it from, let's say, one point to another, from maybe a dealer to the household or whatever, the safety should not be compromised. That is a primary concern that we had. We don't want it to become more unsafe than what it or we want it to be as safe as what it is right now. Okay, and in order to ensure that, the basic principle that we said was that its dynamics in terms of the position of the center of gravity, in terms of its rollover behavior, in terms of its turning behavior, that should remain the same. And that is what we have ensured when we have given the suggestions that are there in this report. The suggestions basically being the amount of load that can be carried and the way the load has to be kept in the vehicle, maybe on the floor or maybe on the seat, and the maximum load and how it should be tied down to the vehicle so that it does not fall over and things like that, and also ensure that the center of the gravity of the vehicle is not compromised to an unsafe level. And that is why, keeping all those things in mind, we finally came up with the suggestion that we have put in this report, saying that if these conditions are met, then the safety will not be compromised, and the economic targets that we have, or the economic goal that we have of utilizing the vehicle further, ensuring that its potential is fully utilized, those are also met. And that is how this report finally came up.
Thank you very much. I will just take a lead from what you said about the safety issues. As you know, the safety norms that you have suggested, which can make them perfectly safe for cargo carrying as well, would you like them to be conditions of the license, or would you like them to be a part of any kind of policy? How do you, my question is enforceability, because as you know, that enforceability of traffic laws rests with the traffic authorities. It is enforced, whether you are overspeeding or whether parking wrong places, traffic police, right? Although the official authorities, the RTOs, the regional transport authorities, how do you ensure the enforceability? For example, I am keeping more than the weights that I'm supposed to, or my dynamics, principles of dynamics of CG is not there. What will be the mechanism that you have in mind for the enforceability? Because if the enforceability is not taken care of, then it will add to the harassment.
So, see, the basic paradigm is that for the commercial use to be as safe as the other, let's say the use with the passengers, certain norms have to be followed. Okay, those norms have to be a part of the government policy. Okay, they have to be a part of the government policy. Okay, enforceability. I mean, eventually enforceability is up to the driver. There can be mechanisms that the government can evolve. As it is right now, enforceability in terms of number of passengers, etc., is being enforced by the government. Right. It can be a part of the same enforcement paradigm. So that can be the same.
Thank you. So according to you, the principles of dynamics that you were recommended for the safety can be a part of the policy before giving dual licenses and enforceability on the same way that which is otherwise being now enforced. Right. My last question to you, what do you think will be the opportunities for dual usage in the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities?
So, I think in the last few years, the way I'll say the economics has changed, okay, because of so much stress on online and delivery-based systems. Auto rickshaws have a huge potential, not only in large cities, but even in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Because today, I'll say, delivery has become a very common mode of, home delivery has become a very common mode of purchase for even the common man. Okay, so even when you go to smaller cities, in fact, recently somebody gave me a figure that even in a city like Jaipur, you have order of 1 million deliveries every month. Okay, so that is a huge number, and so even in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, this would be a very significant mode in which auto rickshaws can contribute to that part of the economy and to that part of the I'll say infrastructure.
Very good. I mean, that means this dual licensing policy will contribute economically even to the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities as well in a big manner.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. I reserve to come back to you if I have another question from there. Now I'll come to Ashish. Ashish, you are a policy maker, right? You make the policy, implement the policy, enforce the policy. From the policy maker's perspective, if suppose I go to you with this suggestion that allow the dual licensing policy and armed with the report of an expert like Professor Chawla, how will you describe the feasibility of such a, as a policy makers?
So, I will talk with respect to this
Sure.
document itself.
Sure.
So, coming to the feasibility of this policy, so I would like to, the pros have already been highlighted very well by Professor Bhattacharya and Professor Chawla. So I would like to highlight some of the issues which might arise for taking it at the level of policy interventions.
Right.
So first of all, the safety issues which we have right now talked, safety and enforcement, like the CG will be disturbed from being at a lower level to a higher level because being in a three-wheel. There is a perception and there is some truth to that perception also that they do tend to get toppled every now and then. So the e-commerce which is the prime target for getting the three-wheelers for this commercial use, for goods transport use. So the dimensions of the bags they are carrying, and it is a very confined space in a three-wheel. We have all traveled in three-wheelers. It is a very confined space. So they'll norms being set, they'll just push those all these bags into them, and that will tend to have some impact. It can be a healthy option, but we'll need to look out for the norms, for the exact feasibility of that. So that will create some of the, which we feel that it will create some of the safety issues. Enforcement being quite a big issue, will be a, I think will be a big issue in this, because what happens is in passengers, what is visible, like four persons are sitting, there is provision for traveling only three passengers. So it's quite visible, and it will easy to enforce for the transport department and for the traffic officials. With the luggage, that by visually looking into it, we cannot see that where is the crux of the luggage. The heavy part of the luggage is at the base or at the top. You will not be able to see unless you inspect it physically. So, and not every auto rickshaw will be, transport officials will not be able to inspect everything from in depth. They will not be able to do that. One more thing was being said that other segments will not have a problem with this, but what we feel is demand from other segments may arise, that even the taxi level vehicles which are operating currently with these aggregators, online aggregators, they'll also say that we are also 5-6 hours we are idle, we will also carry that. They have a greater space, they have boot space, they can carry. It's not allowed, I think, at the this roof level, but they have the more space compared to that. So there can be some resistance from other segments also. Also, today we all see that a lot of customized three-wheelers are already in the market, which are meant for the goods only. So resistance from them can also arise. And one of the most important thing is carrying goods will have a huge impact in, I think, three-wheelers aesthetics. So once they tend to use for this goods part, will that be worthy for passengers to take? Even today, the general perception is if you find some three-wheeler or some taxi very dirty, you will not prefer to travel in that. So that also will be a issue. So all these things need to be looked into before going for the feasibility of this policy.
Right. What exactly we're trying to say that, historically and empirically, if you see that whenever a new technology, a new
One more point, sir,
Sure.
just to cut you. The issuance of permits is a state matter. So all the states will also the stakeholders need to be looped into, because you know that transport by road is more of a state matter. Central government deals with the policy level, and the implementation part, all the states have to be onboarded on that. So permits will also be, because there are different regulations for passenger carrying and goods carrying. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's all for you for some time. Let me tell you, if you look in the history or empirical evidences across the world, whenever a new technology came to the being, it is always opposed. You know it very well when automobiles made its debut in the Detroit, how the people opposed it. You know it very well. So the opposition from some stakeholders, is it that a sufficient ground to stop something which has an win-win contribution to the economy or to the welfare for the policymaker? I myself being a policymaker.
Yes.
Right. Coming to your stakeholders of the state, Motor Vehicles Act, although it is a central legislation, but it gives a widespread flexibility to the state to make their amendments as per their own requirement. In fact, many states have made it also. So I think the legal bar is not a big constraint. It all depends on the state to make their own amendment to the Motor Vehicles Act. And for the sake of innovations or introducing a new scheme, probably the legal hurdles will not be of that. But as you rightly said, some of the issues, like, I didn't follow what exactly you mean by aesthetics of the auto.
So once
Do they really aesthetic looking?
No, not from the aesthetic point of view, but from the perspective of being clean for a passenger use. Because when they'll begin carrying the goods, once they begin to carry goods, there will be a lot of wear and tear. For obvious reasons, there will be a lot of wear and tear. There will be a lot of cleanliness issues. So after carrying goods, when they shift to again to in the same day itself, when they shift to carrying passengers, it will be a it will be a challenge for public to use that.
No, if that auto drive, it is the responsibility on the shoulder of the driver to keep his auto clean.
Yes.
Even he doesn't carry cargo, keeps his auto unclean, nobody will go there.
Yes.
So that is implied. And coming to the compliance issue, you know the Indian laws. Compliance is always on the shoulder of the people who has to comply, not on the shoulder of those who enforce it. I have to comply with the income tax, not income tax authority's responsibility, it's my responsibility. So compliance is always one-sided, right? So anyway, thank you very much. But we'll be sharing the copy of the report with the request to
Yes.
pass it on, put up to the higher authorities. Also.
Yes.
And now I will come to Professor Vignesh. Simply because I'm coming to the last, that doesn't mean you are of least importance. On the contrary, and because I'm aware of some of your salutary and seminal contribution in the application of ICT, particularly for the social welfare. Now, I want to know from you, this is also will be helpful to argue before the regulator. What are your thoughts about the socio-economic impact of the dual usage? I'm not using the word dual licensing, I'm using the dual usage. I want to keep it more broad-based. I don't want to confine it a licensing issue at all.
Thank you very much for this invitation first, and thank you very much for these questions. I research issues related to sharing economy. I'm always excited about the role played by digital platforms for economic development. So from this particular context, I would like to approach this. All right. So when we are talking about dual licensing, I would say that why Uber and Ola works is you have an unutilized resources and you use it for a fee, and when somebody is willing to pay and somebody is trying to kind of develop this entire process in managing this demand and supply of this usage of unutilized resources, what happens? There is an economic development. I have a car, I'm not using it on Saturday, Sunday. Now I'm putting it on a platform and I'm driving someone and someone is paying me, my income increases. I would say that the same logic can be brought in for the auto rickshaws. So you have an auto rickshaw and you are sitting it, you are not using it. The existing research says that the idle time is very high. So if something happens by which I'm able to use it, right, I'm going to make a lot of money. So what are the things required here? Here we need someone to put these people together, saying that okay, you are allowed to do it. You can allow this particular rights. Second one is you also connect with the opportunities that are available in front of you. Say at present the auto rickshaws are not available in any other particular platforms. If there is a possibility, someone decides about this, says okay, let me bring this auto rickshaws to the platform. The impact is going to be huge. Now we are looking at ways by which we can enable this. We are looking at ways by which enable this. So if you are looking at this, the later stages, not immediately you allow it, it will slowly start spreading. People are saying that, okay, I can use it for my freight carrying as well, goods carrying as well. Now over a period of time, somebody will think through a business model saying that, okay, let me bring this on the platform and it's going to be good for me. So over a period of time, the amount of potential or job opportunity this is going to provide in terms of revenue generation is very, very high. I mean, quite significant. I would say that we need to look at ways by which we can encourage this. If you permit me, I would like to respond to Mr. Ashish. So one is related to, he had little concerns related to two things. One is related to safety, whether the auto rickshaws are having, rickshaw drivers are having adequate capacity to handle the safety related issues. The second one is related to hygiene, right, in terms of cleaning, keeping the auto rickshaws together. Right, it is almost like, if I think of an analogy, there are a lot of villages in India. Now the mobile phones are prohibited for women, girl children, basically saying that you end up using a mobile phone, it leads to other things, so you should not use the mobile phone. Okay, one way of doing is, okay, I will not allow this because you are going to go in a bad way. Another way of doing is educating them. Okay, basically telling them, see, with this particular device, you can do a lot more wonderful things. Okay, there are bad things as well. Okay, say that. So when you are going to, if I'm going to allow you to carry the goods, you make sure that the heavy things are going to be at the bottom. You don't really put it to the top. We make sure that things are not going to spill out of the auto rickshaws. Okay, when goods are carried, when a next passenger is going to come and sit, make sure that it's clean. So those kind of things can be brought in as a part of this particular program. who is going to do this awareness raising or talking about educating them? I do not know. I do not know who is going to do this. So one way of looking at is the ministry or the government can take responsibility, I can do it, or the civil society can do it. Or another one is there is also a possibility some private company will come back and say that, okay, it's more like Zomato. Right? Earlier I was eating the restaurant, I did not even know what is the level of hygiene, how an interior looked, and what is the quality of the food. Now, the earlier customers who ate food in this particular restaurant is able to rate them. Okay, there is a platform, somebody is rating some other restaurant. I am looking at the restaurant, I am able to understand what is the quality of this particular restaurant. Is there any similar mechanism can come for the auto rickshaws? So when I look at the auto rickshaw, I scan a code, I am able to understand what is the rating, hygiene rating of this particular auto rickshaw. Can I use it or not? So those kind of possibilities are there, but it's slightly ahead of the times. But eventually, when this particular infrastructure is put in place, the availability is available, and the things will roll automatically. Yeah. Back to you, sir.
It's a really very appreciable answer from you, particularly use of your metaphor of the use of cell phone to the children. Thank you very much. I have another question. Since you are a professor of management, how do you think it will benefit business directly? Do you think so?
I think it's going to benefit business multiple ways. Using a textbookish example, I'll talk about three orders of effect. The first order effect is looking at the revenue potential directly for the drivers. I make money and my income increases is going to be good. My own asset, I paid and got this particular asset. I'm using it. The return on investment is going high for my asset. This is the first order. The second order, when my revenue increases, is going to flow back to my household. So when the revenue increases in my household, the amount of expenses I'm going to make on certain areas related to, say, for example, education and health is going to increase. It's a second order effect. We are talking about a healthy household. The overall ecosystem is going to improve. It is very good. The third one is I'm talking about overall economy in terms of infrastructure, last mile connectivity, correctly pointed by Dr. Jayajit. Last mile connectivity is going to get better. I'm also talking about, say, for example, you brought in towers, you brought in telecom connectivity, you brought in smartphones. Okay, that's a one level of technology you introduced. A lot more innovations happened later. Now people are talking about OTT, people are talking about app-based businesses. We are talking about multiple and hundreds of things, and every day some new things are coming up. So what happens when you put in an infrastructure, when you provide space for people to explore it, there are a lot more things will come. So what will happen, we are talking about tier 2 towns. Now if you go to tier 2 towns, I'm talking about tier 3 towns where the auto rickshaws are not even using their meters. The meters are not there. So what happens is when you allow this legally, okay, so it starts spilling over from tier 2 towns to tier 3 towns. There are a lot of people start exploring, okay, this can be a good last mile connectivity for me. Special economic zones, there are a lot of suppliers that are available for the special economic zones. They will end up using these particular auto rickshaws. So there is a lot more standardization will happen. Overall, the infrastructure gets better. Okay, it's going to be good for the overall ecosystem. The industrial ecosystem is going to get better because of this.
So it will also have a very salutary impact, positive salutary impact on the business.
Yes.
Directly and indirectly, both of them. Thank you. I have one more question before I open the floor to some of the offline participants who are sitting there. I would like to start with Dr. Jayajit, come back to you. The dual usage or dual licensing, whatever manner you want to describe it, do you think it will synergize with the Gati Shakti mission?
The Shakti is about aligning all the linear assets and infrastructure in the country and enabling a higher streamlining of the supply chain and of all the regulations, ROW and so on and so forth. Clearly, the last mile three-wheelers or any other vehicle is a very important component of Gati Shakti. Now, either we invest more, which becomes an economic cost, and buy more of these vehicles, or we reuse and repurpose existing vehicles. And therefore, it clearly helps in amplifying our Honorable Prime Minister's vision of having a more efficient supply chain in place. In addition, if you may permit, Mr. Chairman, I think there are very important and pertinent points that Mr. Ashish Rawat had raised. And a lot of them got addressed by Professor Vigneshwara. But I think one very important point he raised was on enforcement. how does the police on the ground enforce? I mean, they will not be having the expertise of a Professor Chawla or be able to detect what's the kind of equipment or goods being put into place. And therefore, that has been addressed in the report that has been put together. In the sense that it says how much of headspace should be available, how certain kinds of packages will be used. For example, if you're delivering e-commerce packages, it is packaged, and therefore it's not like chicken being delivered, so it messes up the seats. In addition, it is actually ceteris paribus in the sense that it's the same as monitoring any other three-wheeler. There are three-wheelers which have been given license for only commercial purposes. The police are still not able to monitor them. It's the same situation. So whatever is applicable to the licensed commercial three-wheelers for cargo, the same thing will be applicable to here with some, obviously more tuning that needs to be done, which are some of the very, very pertinent points that Ashish Rawat raised. In addition, from the perspective of aesthetics that you mentioned, there are market forces that come into play. If you don't find something clean, then you will not use it. But also an excellent idea that Ashish Rawat gave was about taxis and cabs. Why should they not be permitted to also use for cargo purposes? I think that's a brilliant idea. And perhaps with the permission of Professor Chawla, maybe that's a research we should look into as a subsequent follow-up research, because that's also an asset which is not being used. And having said that, all of these assets are actually being used for cargo right now. The taxis actually carry food. That Uber Eats is nothing but carrying cargo. Three-wheelers also carrying cargo without the licensing. Once you get the licensing in, the regulation comes in, and therefore one can actually put the challan for those who are not following the regulations. But if it's not regulated, then anyway the misuse of these vehicles are happening. And therefore it makes a lot of sense from multiple dimensions that we have the dual licensing policy, which then actually cleans up the market while providing benefits to each of the stakeholders.
Yeah, to a large extent, I agree with you. Professor Chawla, do you have any comment about a synergy with Gati Shakti Mission? I'm sure you were associated with it also.
Yeah. Yeah, so first, I think what I just mentioned about the market forces taking care of many of the things, especially with regard to hygiene, that is what my view also was. And also another point was made by Mr. Ashish that the sector which is, let's say, modified three-wheeler that are currently allowed commercial rights, they might have a view on whether auto rickshaw should be allowed a dual mode or not. My view on that would be that currently the bandwidth that these other modes have, that is obviously not able to cater completely to what the demands are in the changing scenario. Okay, and since they are not able to meet the demand, I don't think they should object to somebody else coming and filling in that gap. Okay, so and of course with regards to safety issues, whether they'll be adhered to by the driver or not, the enforcement issues, I think a comment has already been made that addresses that pretty well. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comment. Professor Vignesh, I would like to have your comments about synergy with Gati Shakti. I have the comments of two experts already, but what do you have to say?
Yeah, I would say. I would say the existing strength of the program, the potential strength of the program will get amplified because of this particular proposal that is being given in this paper. So why? If you talk about this entire the business systems, you look at e-retailers, there is a long tail. Okay, there are if so you open an Amazon or a Flipkart, you end up seeing millions of products. You may not buy it, but that millions of products presence is very important for this particular business to run. The same logic applies for even any industrial systems. So there are a lot of smaller players who need to be available in the market in order for the ecosystem to run it. So how this smaller ecosystem, the smaller component of the ecosystem, how they can function better is they're also dependent on these small logistics service providers. So when we are able to enable them, what happens is the overall infrastructure gets strengthened. Okay, especially when we are talking about logistics, overall infrastructure will get strengthened. Now, in future, if you are really looking at, is there any kind of information systems in place by which we can tap into this? Right? Say, for example, I'm a small truck holder, truck owner, or I'm an auto rickshaw driver. owner, when I become a part of this particular database systems, when I'm setting up a special economic zone, whether I have access to these particular players or not. Right, suppose I want to transport certain things from A to B, is it possible for me to come up with a bidding system? I go to the panel and say that I have certain goods or things needs to be transported from A to B, who is available to transport it. Now, if these people are able to receive this information, I can bid for the project. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a larger player or a smaller player. If it is a small amount of goods, a lot more auto rickshaws can bid for this project. So overall, it is going to be very good. But then we need to have certain pre-established infrastructure put in place, then things will roll on. Yeah.
Right. Ashish. Ashish, you have heard all the three panelists. Why I'm coming last to you? This is a normal protocol in the government. The government speaks when everybody stops speaking. Right? So Ashish, you have heard it. Economically, it's a market-driven, safety-wise, synergy-wise, business-wise, everything is pointing out that dual licensing or dual usage makes a lot of sense. And probably whether your license permits or not permit, it is already happening. Right. So coming to the synergy point of view, because why I'm asking this question, you are a very important stakeholder in Gati Shakti. You know it very well. You are a member of the 7 stakeholders, right? For any infrastructure projects we need your consent. What do you have to say from the synergy point of view of the Gati Shakti? Because I find a lot of consistency with the Gati Shakti mission and the dual usage. What do you have to say from that perspective? We have taken a due note of your earlier observation, quite valid observation. But what do you have to say about this? From the perspective of the Gati Shakti mission principle.
So, the comments from all the fellow panelists are very welcome, and they make a lot of sense. But even after that, I'll say that a great more discussion needs to happen. And somewhere I read in this report that there was mentioned about a pilot being done at certain stages.
That's true. That is Professor Charles.
Yeah. So at a certain in a smaller space, the pilot being done, and then talking about the feasibility after actually implementing that needs to be taken care of. I think that is my view.
Okay, thank you for final converging with all the time. Now, any question from any of you? Yes. Yeah, please.
Just start up the top.
Somebody help with the mic, please.
Thank you so much for this insightful conversation and the roundtable conference. So I'll begin with, I come from a small town, Gaya, and which has narrow roads. And major of the accident happens because of rickshaw drivers rash driving. So my question is, if we give a grant dual licensing to auto rickshaw drivers, there will be incentives to have more auto rickshaws on the road. So how do we tackle this problem, and also will there be a limit on the dual licensing in that case? Thank you. I hope my question is clear.
Limiting the dual licensing. Professor Chawla will be in the right place to answer this.
Yeah. My first comment, when you say that in a place like Gaya, auto rickshaws are a major cause of accidents, are you saying that on the basis of statistics or a public opinion?
Public opinion majorly. I'm not looking at statistics, but there are narrow roads and there are a lot of rash drivers in.
No, so that is the first thing that we've observed in all our studies. That the public opinion is often not in line with the actual statistics. So let us be scientific about it. Okay. So if you look at the statistics across the country, I don't have figures offhand right now. I didn't come with those figures, but the contribution of three-wheelers in crashes is much lower than the contribution of other modes of vehicles. Is much lower than that. Okay. Across the country, roughly about 2/3 crashes are because of for the vulnerable road user. Vulnerable road users would be two-wheelers, bicycle riders, and the rickshaws, not the auto rickshaws, but the rickshaws. Okay, that is roughly about 2/3. Okay, Of the remaining one third, about 10% would be the car drivers, maybe even a little lower than that also, but roughly about 10%. And larger vehicles, again, smaller. Okay, so the perception does become very different from reality. That is the first thing. Implementation and ensuring safety. There is no doubt that we have to ensure that all vehicles are safe, and that should be taken care of. In fact, I'm going to make a statement which I'm sure he's not going to like. Okay, but if you ask me personally, the entity which is most responsible for crashes, for fatal accidents, and so on, okay, is the road design.
Agreed.
Okay, so if you look up any of the major accidents that are happening, India has about 1.5 lakh crash fatalities in a year. Okay, but the road design, in my opinion, is one of the biggest thing that fault. Okay, so blaming the auto rickshaw is not fair.
Totally, sir. Agreed, sir. Like there are narrow roads in the small towns, and that's all the issue.
Yeah, no, let me continue where Professor Chawla left. Sorry, what's your name?
Kushbu.
Khushbu. Khushbu, in Gaya, do people order from Amazon, Flipkart,
Yes, sir.
Zomato?
Yeah,
They do,
e-commerce
right?
is there now.
Lot of it, right?
Yeah, they do.
How does it get delivered? In
Bicycle
bicycle
and bike.
and bike. And before that, before bicycle and bike, how does the products go to the warehouse? Because the bicycle and bike will pick it up from somewhere, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So how does the products go to
That's
those places?
Mostly trucks and
Trucks and big trucks.
Yeah.
So you'll have big trucks clogging up your roads, the narrow roads, right? And then you'll have lots of additional vehicles, the two-wheelers clogging up your narrow roads. So essentially what you're saying is that it's okay to have more vehicles in rather than to repurpose the existing vehicles. And therefore, what will cause more congestion? Having dual licensing or not having dual licensing? Isn't it?
Yeah.
So dual licensing will reduce congestion, and therefore there will be less collisions that will happen because of that. Yeah?
Yeah, I just add to what he was saying. See, the final delivery is done by the two-wheelers, right?
Right.
And two-wheelers are known to be the most dangerous from a safety perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so if you are able to shift from two-wheelers to three-wheelers, it's going to be much better.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Okay, and talking of narrow roads, yes, road design is an issue. I agree with that. Again, need not be narrow versus wide, but the same narrow road can be redesigned much more practical way so that the usage is better and things like that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anything you want to say, Vignesh? Because he raised a very interesting questions from a
slightly
downtown
different take
Kolkata.
on this. I have a slightly different take on this. Maybe I don't go with the report. We have grocery stores inside the campus. Now, a lot of our campus residents started using e-commerce. The main complaint of our grocery stores, Gupta stores, is walking is good for health. Why people don't walk here and come and buy things, go back? Right? So people ideally in Gaya should walk to the restaurant, have food, take their own vehicle and go to the market and do it. We are not doing it. We are looking at better alternatives. This offers one of the better alternatives. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a different take, Khushbu, on this. If the Gaya doesn't have the narrow roads, it will lose its identity. People will stop going over there. He said, it's not a Gaya. So, okay. So, any other question from anybody? Yeah. You can sit and put your questions.
Hello everyone. Thank you for the discussions. My name is Himashmita, and I'm come from the northeast Assam. So there are less number of auto rickshaw in Assam. Also, so the people who drive this rickshaw, they feel that there are less income from this business. So there are less number of that. Also, when we go and ask how much is the charge, they charge very high because they get less passengers. So how we can see how to increase their income? Also, when I come to Delhi, I see okay, there are more number of auto rickshaw I can get from anywhere. So in Assam we do not get that. Secondly, when you talk about this logistic, like the cargo thing, when you mentioned the e-commerce, so the ONDC is coming to that. So can we think from that perspective that if like somebody has to like deliver, so can the auto rickshaw can be imparted into that, like in northeast in Assam? So how, like, what your suggestions?
Yeah, Ashish, I think this question was clearly aimed at you.
I did not get the last part, but because most of it yours was the statement. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, the first thing is like how the income will increase for the auto rickshaw, because in Assam there are less number of auto drivers because they feel that business is not going to give them like more income. So how their mindset can be increased, like the in terms of the
So,
income.
are there other modes of transport which are more prevalent?
Like in Assam, we have the buses. Also, we use like taxi. Recently, this the bike also this come up. Then there is
The most
magic. We
used one,
call
the most used
magic.
one.
Yeah, the small kind of vehicle called magic. Those
Tata
things.
Magic. Yeah.
So, but they feel the auto drivers feel that like we do not have like business on this auto. So, what do you feel on that?
Do you use auto there? Why?
Other
There are fare meters in.
no.
Yeah. So it has to be a holistic fleet management basically. I think there is a lot of, even in Delhi, personally speaking, I have never traveled in an auto by meter. I have been around in Delhi, Ghaziabad, in this vicinity for last 10 years. I've never traveled with a fare, even with a fare meter. Everyone has fare meter here, but yeah, that is one of the very big example that they tend to charge very high. If they'll go by fare meter, the amount they are quoting, there'll be almost half of that. So generally, they don't prefer that, and that is what the demand and supply thing. That is how the demand and supply works. So basically, the sir was talking about some of the awareness campaigns. So these sort of things will help them to have a greater acceptability in the general public. The issue is basically of the acceptability. You tend to use the buses. You are talking about the magic thing, Tata Magic. So they have fixed fares. Like from this point to this point, they'll charge 20 rupees, 25 rupees, and public tend to use that. Even they are also overloading, but public it has a greater acceptance in that sense. So I think that awareness to that fleet, that three-wheelers fleet has to be there. It has to come from their side also. That is what I feel. That then only there will be a greater sort of acceptance in the general public. Agar they'll charge genuine amount to you, you'll anyway prefer that. Na? You're using Ola, Uber. Because they are charging even when in about a year or a year and a half there were surcharges very high. Then we used to cancel them, cancel those. We used to not prefer those rides. What was the second part of that?
Okay, so second part was like ONDC, this ONDC is coming up, right? So if we see there's like buyer, seller, and the logistic part. So if this be implemented from the logistic like side, like how it will be in Northeast or Assam? How do we think? Because there's less number of auto rickshaw, but if they wanted to deliver something from one point to other, how that thing?
It's nothing about being in Assam. It will be anywhere. It will be like any other city. If there is demand, there will be supply. That is the basic crux of the business. Also, one thing I would like to add. Sir was telling about Ola, Uber being very successful in a taxi business. So, what I feel that the taxis and the acceptance of Ola, Uber through taxi was there because there was not any cross-segment usage. With this policy, the policy under consideration which we are talking about, there is cross-sector usage we are talking about. So a greater impetus will have to be given to the norms which are to be set. For coming to your question, I think the acceptance will be there, and it will be no different from any other city. If there will be demand in Assam, eventually the local businesses and the local drivers, they will be whispers that the demand is there, the income is there. So anyway, the number of three-wheelers and those things will increase gradually. That is the how everywhere it works. At Delhi, in Delhi, the what the fleet was 10 years ago, it is not same today, because as the demand has risen, that fleet also has compounded.
I think some very important points that Ashish made, but excellent question at multiple levels. I think one of the very important point Ashish mentioned is fleet management. It's not just enough to say that they will be picking up cargo and having dual usage of both passenger and cargo and small packets being covered. How will they do it? In fact, the second question you talked about is even of very high value, which is connecting them to ONDC, because that's how their income will go up. And that's the whole purpose of ONDC, to reduce the cost of the economy, because all the assets that are not being used will then start getting plugged into ONDC, and therefore the total cost of commerce in this country will come down significantly. But can you imagine a three-wheeler auto rickshaw driver going and plugging into ONDC? What will they plug into? Right? Where is the wire that they will plug into it, right? Who will train them? Who will teach them? Who will ensure that there is a quality of service coming in? To the point that Professor Vigneshwara was making, that Ola and Uber were very successful because there was somebody who was in the middle saying, I will make sure that there is a certain service level being provided, a certain quality being provided. And mind you, even Uber has gone ahead and started delivering food, which is Uber Eats. So it's not just passenger, they're also delivering cargo in that sense already. And therefore, you actually need a layer on top which aggregates these auto rickshaws and ensures that they are flexibly used between passenger and cargo. And therefore, that's also a great segue into allowing startups to come into this country. So there will be startups mushrooming in Assam, in Bangalore, in Coimbatore, Imphal, and so on and so forth, all over the country, who will then start helping out these auto rickshaw drivers and thereby making this a far more efficient economy. So I think a absolutely brilliant question, and I think thanks to Ashish Rawat for suggesting the whole fleet management concept, because without that it becomes a little difficult to take this policy forward for the reasons again that Ashish had mentioned. So it's important to make sure that there is a fleet management in the middle.
Yeah, any other questions? We have only one or one. Yeah, please. You come forward. Unless you have chosen voluntarily to sit in the back seat.
Old habits, I guess.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Thanks for this interesting discussion around dual licensing policy. My name is Krishna Gopal. I'm first year student at the School of Public Policy, IIT Delhi, master's program. So I have two basic questions. One is that, from what I understand from the discussion, that this policy making is happening at the center level, and then states are responsible for the implementation. But if you look at the different regions, different states, the conditions are very different. And at the same time, from one season to another, the conditions may vary. For example, let's say in winter, it may not be that safe to kind of drive auto compared to summer. Similarly, if we look at some other factors, I come from the Rajasthan. So Jaipur is a tourist hub, get flooded during winter time, but summer is mostly off season. So probably these auto rickshaw drivers would consider carrying passengers during winter and maybe not during the kind of summer period. Similarly, narrow roads and rainy seasons, hilly areas, safety might is a different issue compared to plain areas. So when we look at the policy making process from the kind of this center point of view, how all these regional factors are taking into consideration? And is there any kind of feedback loop that works? Okay, maybe we have come up with a policy, and then some kind of feedback coming from the different regions, and then we'll probably make some changes. So how does this work? That's my first question. Second question is, so here we are talking about the income potential and like dual licensing policy, and talking about the goods and carrying passengers, but similarly there can be like other areas from where these auto rickshaws drivers can kind of earn some potential income areas. I was thinking, apart from like carrying passengers and goods, maybe they can consider, let's say, there are some startups like Milk Basket. They deliver milk and vegetables early in the morning, let's say 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. So maybe they can rent it out to these startups during this period, and then maybe carry passengers and goods during daytime, and then let's say, for example, in the evening, maybe to e-commerce companies to kind of deliver other kind of goods, and maybe during the night time to other drivers to kind of utilize this auto, covering all the kind of this 24 hours duration. So would it be possible to kind of consider this multi-purpose licensing instead of dual licensing from a policy point of view? So those are the two questions.
Well, both the questions have a legal implications. Any of you?
No, I think the first one is a question, is a tutorial on public policy where you are best suited, Dr. Mitra.
I will.
So if you answer the first one, then I can take up the second one.
I am sure, being a student of public policy, you are aware of the process through which the legislations are made in India. Are you aware of it? How the legislations are made in India, and what is the difference between an act and rules? Anyway, I'm not going to the theory. See, the legislations in India are made in three ways. Constitution has a three lists, where the exclusively right vests with the center for making any legislation. There is the parliament. Second, exclusively to the state list, and there is a concurrent list, where both of them are competent. Coming to the area we're talking about, the Motor Vehicles Act is a central legislation, but it gives wide flexibility to the state to make amendment to suit the regional requirement that you are talking about. Center has no intention. Center makes the broad mother provisions, mainly the penal provision. If you look in a central legislation, that concentrate on the applicability, scope, and penal provision, that what if this act is not obeyed. And rest of this operation, they left to the states. So every state under the central legislation makes what is called rules, right? The rules are not necessarily legislation. Rules are a derivative from the state. So the state can make the rules. For example, if a city like Lucknow or Jaipur, in some of the areas, the dual licensing doesn't suit, so in the permit they can say it is only acceptable or permissible for this area, this route, not this route. So that flexibility is there, and therefore in a federalism we cannot absolutely take away that authority from the state. So that's not a bar for making the rules. Coming to the second issue we're trying, what was your second issue? Because your statements were too long, so I lost the question.
So second question was around multi-purpose licensing.
Multi-purpose license. What do you mean by multi-purpose license?
So carrying goods and
that means no license?
Yes. So
does it mean no license?
We cover more areas basically.
So let me take that up, Dr. Mitra, with your permission.
Sure.
Look, policy making is a slow process, right? It's a deliberated process. As Professor Chawla and Ashish Rawat said, let's have a pilot first. Let's see what's the implication. Now, by multi-purpose, do you mean it'll carry hazardous chemicals, inflammable products? Can it carry petroleum? I don't think so. Or maybe it can be. We should have an open debate on that. But clearly, the next step is to have something which is a low-hanging fruit. E-commerce packages are flowing through. Speed Post, Indian Postal Office packages, they are normal, safe packages, already been checked. They're all wrapped up in something, so nothing is spilling over. That's an easy thing to do. So as a first step, that's what one should be doing. In addition, I think you had a very brilliant suggestion that can it be used for a different purpose in the morning and a different purpose in the evening, and the dual licensing will enable that to happen. right? In fact, there are initiatives in rural India where electric vehicles are being used exactly for this purpose. So they bring in the goods in the morning to the shops, and then they do something else. They also become a hospital, an ambulance at some point in time. So this whole thing is getting repurposed 3 to 4 times in a day based on what is the requirement. So can we do that in the urban areas also, and which is what you're suggesting? I think these are brilliant suggestions. I think, Ashish, you should have a workshop with these students sometime to get wonderful suggestions coming out from them. Thank you.
Great. Does it satisfy the answer? I just want to talk about the second part, since you are a public policy student. Remember, when you make a legislation or a rule, it is never, never in derogation of any rules hitherto in existence. Always in conjunction with, or in compliance with, or in supplement with. No rules, no legislation made in derogation prevails. Then you have to repeal it. Then make a new law. So therefore, when you are talking hazardous act, there are certain acts or rules in operation governing the movement of hazardous item that will chip in. Even you have a multi-purpose license, you have to ensure the compliance of that too. So automatically some rule or other will take care of some other aspect. That is the position.
Got
Okay.
it. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? If you don't have, we overshot the time. We'll close. Yeah, you have a questions. Yeah, here is the mic.
Hi, hello, good morning everyone. Thank you for this lovely discussion today. So I just have one question. That we were talking about Tata Magic itself today. So in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, it has been interchangeably used for the traveling purpose for passenger used for the passengers as well as for transporting the goods itself. So do you think working on the design of these a little bit, maybe working on the design itself on these auto rickshaws, can that thing help and it can give a kickstart to the better income to them, and can help in the dual licensing process as well further?
So Tata Magic is a very interesting example, and you can sit down. So the fact that they're carrying goods while they've got only a passenger carrying license is exactly what I was saying is happening in contravention to the law. So it's already happening, right? Now, since there is no aggregated level or fleet management, as Ashish had mentioned, therefore there is no oversight on it. So it's still happening. It's a lot of illegal stuff happening, and whenever there is illegal stuff, there is income enhancement happening of not the drivers, but of the police and enforcement agencies around, right? And so it's not a very nice situation to be in. And therefore, what you're saying actually amplifies the need for dual licensing, so that it happens in a legal way with an oversight, with proper rules and safeties that folks like Professor Chawla and experts like Professor Chawla have been talking about. Having said that, why I said Tata Magic is very interesting is because it was conceived to replace auto rickshaws. When it was brought into the Delhi government, at the point in time that it was brought in, the first objection was that it is not really an auto rickshaw because auto rickshaw does not have glasses on the side, and therefore you can't have that. So Tata Magic reworked on it and removed the glass and put plastic sheets on it so that it complies. So it becomes worse and worse. And it went on that auto rickshaw is this, you are this, so make it worse and worse and worse. And finally it said auto rickshaws got 3 wheels, you got 4 wheels. We cannot allow you to replace auto rickshaws in Delhi. Really, 4 wheels is far more safer, comfortable for the roads, and far more aesthetical, which is again a word that Ashish has used. Tata Magic looks far more aesthetic than a 3-wheeler auto rickshaw. But that's a different story altogether. That's multiple dynamics playing out. The core of your question is essentially amplifying the fact that we should have dual licensing so that all the be used for a greater period of time and have a larger utility. Yeah.
I'll just add one thing to that. If dual licensing is allowed at some point, okay, then automatically the issue of redesign of the vehicles will be taken up by the manufacturers. Right now, the manufacturers don't have incentive to redesign it because it's not allowed. If it is allowed, then all that will happen.
Ashish, any concluding remarks before you close the session?
Thank you for inviting me here and for this fruitful discussion with respect to this case for dual licensing policy, and let's hope this goes forward and in a positive direction.
And since you are, our mates, I'm very sure that you will take it forward further.
Let's hope so,
Professor
sir.
Vignesh, any concluding?
I don't have any further comments. I do not see any negative implications of this, right? What I see is a lot of positive things. On an experimental basis, we should definitely try it and see. We apply it and see it in a small area how this is going before rolling out to the pan India. I don't see any negative implications. It's almost like a must do now as of now. So we should go ahead and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. So if we will be closing the sessions now, the last task rests with me on thanking all the panelists from the Core of Hearts, Dr. Jayajit, Professor Chawla, Ashish, by this time there might be 30, 40 files on your table, right? And that might be putting you in anxious moments, huh? And maybe a couple of calls from the secretary also, right? And Professor Vignesh for sparing your time. I know how busy all of you. Thank you very much, and thanks all of you who research scholars and students who converge here and participate in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the wonderful moderation.